Welcome to Learn English with Sara. In today's episode of Learn English Through Story, we'll dive into a magical adventure filled with wonder, courage, and imagination. So relax, listen carefully, and enjoy the story while improving your English step by step. This is The Adventures of Peter Pan. In the heart of London, where gas lamps glowed along quiet streets, and the night air carried the sound of distant carriages, stood the Darling family's lovely home. Inside, laughter and warmth filled the nursery, a large, sunny room with colorful pictures on the walls, a big clock that ticked gently, and toys scattered everywhere. 3 children lived there: Wendy, the oldest, John the second, and little Michael, the youngest. They were loved dearly by their parents, Mr. and Mrs. Darling, and cared for by their most unusual nanny, a large Newfoundland dog named Nana. Though she had fur instead of an apron, Nana was the kindest, most loyal nurse any child could dream of. Each evening, as twilight settled over the rooftops of London, Nana prepared the children for bed. She ran warm water for Michael's bath, checking it carefully with her paw, then dressed them in their soft pajamas. Wendy loved bedtime stories. John liked pretending to be a brave soldier, and Michael, who was still very small, usually fell asleep clutching his teddy bear. Mrs. Darling would come in, kiss them gently, and sing softly until their eyes closed. But one evening something strange happened. While Mrs. Darling was tidying the nursery, she noticed movement near the window. When she turned, she saw a young boy hovering outside, yes, hovering as if he were floating in the air. He looked no older than Wendy and wore clothes made of leaves. For a moment, Mrs. Darling thought it must be a dream. Then Nana barked loudly, startling the boy, and the window flew open. The boy darted away into the night, leaving something behind, a shadow lying flat on the nursery floor. "Oh, poor child," whispered Mrs. Darling, gently picking it up. "He's lost his shadow." She folded it neatly and placed it in a drawer, thinking she would show it to Mr. Darling later. That night, when the children were fast asleep, Mr. and Mrs. Darling left for a dinner party. The house became silent except for Nana's quiet breathing outside in the garden. The clock ticked softly. And then, just past midnight, the nursery window opened once again. A small ball of golden light darted into the room, flickering like a tiny star. It wasn't a light at all, but a fairy. Her name was Tinker Bell. She flew quickly around the room, searching for something. Moments later, the boy returned, his eyes bright with determination. "Tink, where's my shadow?" he whispered. Tinker Bell flew straight to the drawer and pointed. Peter Pan grinned. "Ah, there you are," he said, softly pulling out the folded shadow. He tried to attach it to his feet using soap, but no matter how hard he pressed, it wouldn't stick. Frustrated, he began to cry quietly. The sound of soft sobbing woke Wendy. Rubbing her eyes, she sat up and gasped when she saw the strange boy by the window. But instead of being afraid, she felt curious. "Little boy, why are you crying?" she asked. Peter turned around, surprised. "I can't get my shadow to stay on," he said miserably. "Oh, you poor thing, come here, let me help you." She fetched her sewing basket and carefully stitched the shadow back onto his feet. When she finished, Peter jumped with joy, his laughter bright as bells. "Oh, Wendy, you are wonderful," he said. Wendy blushed. "Do you really think so?" "Yes," Peter said, still dancing. "You're the best." "Now tell me," Wendy asked curiously, "who are you?" "I'm Peter Pan." "Peter Pan? That's such a short name," she said, smiling. Peter laughed. "That's all I need. I live in a place called Neverland. Do you know it?" Wendy shook her head. "It's a wonderful island," Peter continued. "There are mermaids in the lagoon, fairies in the forest, and pirates we fight almost every day. I'm the captain of the Lost Boys' children who have no mother or father." Wendy listened amazed. "Oh, how exciting," she whispered. Peter's face softened. "We need a mother," he said quietly. "Someone to tell us stories." "I know lots of stories," said Wendy. Peter's eyes sparkled. "Then come with me to Neverland. You can tell us stories every night." "But I can't fly," Wendy said. "I can teach you," Peter replied confidently. At that moment, John and Michael stirred and woke up. "Who's that?" John asked sleepily. "This is Peter Pan," Wendy said. "He's from Neverland and he's going to teach us how to fly." The boys were instantly awake, full of wonder. Peter laughed, sprinkling a pinch of shimmering fairy dust onto their shoulders. Now he said, "Think happy thoughts and off you go." Wendy felt light as air. She floated up from her bed, followed by John and Michael. They giggled, twirling through the air like feathers in the wind. "We can fly! We can really fly!" they cried. "Come on," Peter called. "Tinker Bell, show us the way." Together they soared out the nursery window into the starry London sky, following the trail of golden fairy light. Below them, Nana barked helplessly as the children disappeared among the clouds. When Mr. and Mrs. Darling returned from their dinner, the nursery was empty and the windows stood wide open. The children flew through the night, their laughter echoing softly between the clouds. Below them, the lights of London glimmered like a sea of gold. They flew over rooftops, chimneys, and the sleeping city guided by the sparkling light of Tinker Bell. The air was cool and sweet, carrying the scent of the ocean far away. "How much farther is Neverland?" asked John, his voice trembling with excitement. "Just follow the second star to the right and straight on till morning," Peter called back, darting ahead like a shooting star. They flew for hours over towns, mountains, and endless waves. Finally, as dawn began to paint the sky pink and gold, Peter pointed to a small island below, surrounded by a turquoise sea. "There it is, Neverland," he shouted. Wendy, John, and Michael stared in wonder. The island shimmered in the morning light, dense forests, sparkling rivers and cliffs, shaped like giant faces. Somewhere far off they could see a pirate ship anchored in a quiet bay. They landed gently in a forest clearing surrounded by enormous trees and colorful flowers that seemed to hum with magic. "This is the home of the Lost Boys," said Peter proudly. "They're waiting for us." Hidden deep underground was a secret house, the Lost Boys' home. It was cozy, with only one big room, a fireplace, and tiny beds carved into the earth. It smelled of pine and wood smoke. But before the children could meet them, danger was already near. In another part of the forest, Captain Hook was marching through the trees with his band of pirates. He was tall, cruel, and dressed in a long red coat. His face was pale and sharp, and where his right hand should have been, there was a gleaming iron hook. He hated Peter Pan more than anything in the world. Years ago, Peter had cut off Hook's arm in a sword fight, and a crocodile had eaten it. Ever since, that same crocodile followed Hook everywhere, hoping for another bite. The beast had swallowed a clock long ago, and its ticking was the only thing that warned Hook of its approach. "Blast that boy," Hook growled, his black eyes flashing. "I'll find him, and this time he'll pay." His men followed nervously, jumping every time they heard the faint tick-tock coming from somewhere in the forest. While the pirates hunted, another group arrived, the Indians of Neverland, led by the brave and beautiful Tiger Lily. They were the pirates' sworn enemies. Tiger Lily's eyes sparkled with courage, and she carried a bow across her shoulder. Like Tinker Bell and Wendy, she too cared deeply for Peter Pan. By midday, the forest was alive with movement. Pirates, Indians, and Lost Boys were all on the move, each unaware of the others. Then Nibs, one of the Lost Boys, looked up and pointed. "Look!" he shouted. "There's a lovely white bird in the sky." But Tinker Bell, who was jealous of Wendy's beauty and kindness, quickly said, Yes, it's a Wendy bird. Shoot it down." Nibs took his bow, aimed, and released an arrow. The white figure fell gently to the ground. When the boys ran over, they gasped. It wasn't a bird at all. It was Wendy. At that moment, Peter flew down with John and Michael. Seeing Wendy lying still, he turned pale. "Who did this?" he cried. "Toodles," said one of the boys, trembling. "Shot her. He thought she was a bird." Peter knelt beside Wendy, fear in his eyes. "Wendy, can you hear me?" Wendy stirred slightly and opened her eyes. "I'm all right," she whispered weakly. Peter exhaled in relief. "You're safe now," he said softly. He turned to the Lost Boys, who were filled with guilt. "We must take care of her. She's our mother now." And so, to make her comfortable, they built a small house around her right there in the forest, a lovely little cottage made of branches, flowers, and leaves. When Wendy saw it, she smiled and said, "What a beautiful house. Thank you, boys." "Will you really be our mother?" asked Nibs hopefully. "Of course," said Wendy. "I'll tell you stories every night before bed." That evening she sat by the fire in her little house, and the Lost Boys gathered around her. John and Michael leaned against her arms as she began to speak. "Once upon a time there was a girl named Cinderella." The forest grew quiet. Even the stars above seemed to listen. Outside, Peter stood guard with his sword, his shadow long under the moonlight. He looked at the house feeling something new and strange, something like love, though he didn't know the word for it. Not far away, Captain Hook stared at the glow from their campfire. "There he is," he muttered. "Peter Pan. Enjoy your happiness while it lasts." The days that followed were filled with laughter, adventure, and the sound of children's voices echoing through the trees. Neverland was a world of wonder. In the mornings, Peter taught the boys how to fight pirates with wooden swords. In the afternoons, they played by the lagoon, splashing and chasing mermaids who sang sweet songs before diving beneath the waves. Wendy, meanwhile, became the heart of their home. She mended torn clothes, cooked simple meals, and told stories that brought warmth to every soul. One golden afternoon, Peter led the children to the mermaids' lagoon. The sun danced on the surface of the water, turning it into a mirror of light. Beautiful mermaids sat on a great rock, combing their long, glistening hair and singing softly. Their laughter rang like wind chimes. John leaned forward, fascinated. "I want to catch one," he whispered. Peter laughed. "That's impossible. You can't catch a mermaid, they belong to the water." Suddenly, Tinker Bell darted nervously around them. "Look!" cried Wendy. "A boat!" 2 pirates were rowing toward the lagoon. In the boat sat Tiger Lily, her hands tied tightly with ropes. Peter and Wendy ducked behind a rock and listened. "Let's leave her here on this rock," sneered Smee, one of Hook's men. "When the tide rises, she'll drown." The pirates laughed cruelly. But Peter, quick thinking as ever, whispered, "I've got an idea." Then, imitating Captain Hook's deep, angry voice, he shouted, "Cut the ropes and let her go, you fools. Do as I say." The pirates froze. "Did you hear that?" said Starkey, his face pale. "It's the captain," Smee whispered. "We must obey." They cut the ropes, and Tiger Lily immediately leaped into the water, swimming swiftly to safety. Peter laughed quietly, but his amusement was short-lived. From the shadows, Captain Hook himself had seen everything. His eyes blazed with fury. "So Peter Pan thinks he can outsmart me again," he growled. "This time I'll make him pay dearly." As the moon rose, Hook crept closer to the rock where Peter and Wendy were hiding. The air was tense. Then came the clash of steel. The 2 enemies met in a fierce battle under the stars. Hook's blade flashed dangerously, his hook slicing the air, while Peter moved with lightning speed, blocking each strike. Sparks flew each time their swords met. "You'll never win," Hook shouted Peter. Hook snarled, "We'll see about that, boy." But Peter was young, fast, and full of courage. He ducked beneath Hook's swing and struck back. With a final push, Peter disarmed the pirate, sending Hook stumbling into the cold sea. Hook surfaced, gasping, only to hear the dreadful tick-tock, tick-tock of the crocodile. His face turned white as he scrambled back to his ship, terrified. Peter wiped his brow, breathing hard. "That was close," he said with a grin. Then he turned to Wendy. "Are you all right?" "Yes," she said softly, though her voice trembled. "But Peter, that was so brave." The tide was rising fast, and the rock they stood on was sinking lower. "We must leave," said Peter, "but you're too tired to swim or fly." He looked around and spotted a kite drifting through the sky, its long tail trailing behind it. "Hold on to this," he said, tying the tail gently around Wendy's waist. "It will carry you home." The wind caught the kite, lifting Wendy high into the air. She waved down at Peter as she floated away toward safety. Alone now, Peter waited until the last wave nearly covered the rock before spreading his arms and flying home. That night, when he returned to the underground home, everyone cheered. Wendy hugged him tightly, grateful beyond words. From that day forward, Peter became not just their leader, but their protector. Life in Neverland settled into a joyful rhythm. Every morning brought a new adventure, hunting in the forest, dancing with fairies, and building dreams from sunlight and laughter. Wendy told stories before bedtime, and Peter often pretended he didn't care to listen, though his eyes always sparkled as she spoke. But one evening, as the fire burned low, Wendy told a story that changed everything. In a great city called London, she began there lived a mother and a father who had 3 children. One night their children flew away, and though the parents waited every evening by the open window, the children never came back. John and Michael grew quiet. "That's us," John whispered. Wendy nodded sadly. "Yes, it's our story. and our poor parents must still be waiting for us." Peter frowned. "Parents forget their children sometimes," he said quickly, "and when they do, new children take their place." Wendy's eyes widened in shock. "Oh no, Peter, Mother and Father would never forget us." She stood up, her voice trembling. "We must go home." John and Michael looked at her, torn between adventure and love. "Must we really?" asked Michael softly. "Yes," said Wendy firmly. "It's time." The Lost Boys looked heartbroken. "Please don't leave us," Wendy said. "Nibs, you're our mother." Wendy smiled gently. "You can come with us. In London you'll have a real family and a real home." The boys' faces lit up with joy. But Peter turned away silent. He looked at the fire and said quietly, "I'm not going. I don't want to grow up." That night, while everyone slept, shadows moved outside the entrance to the underground home. The pirates had found them. The moon hung low over the forest that night, casting long silver shadows across the ground. While Wendy, John, Michael, and the Lost Boys slept peacefully, Captain Hook and his men crept silently through the trees. Their boots made no sound on the soft moss, and the only light came from their dim lanterns, swinging back and forth. Hook's eyes gleamed with triumph. At last he whispered, "They're mine." One by one, the pirates surrounded the entrance to the underground home. Then, with a sudden shout, they burst in. Before anyone could scream, rough hands grabbed the children and tied their wrists. Wendy struggled, calling Peter's name, but he did not wake. Hook grinned, holding a finger to his lips. "Quiet, my dear, or you'll wake your hero." By the time Peter stirred, it was too late. The pirates had vanished into the darkness, leaving behind only silence and the faint smell of sea salt. He sat up confused, his heart pounding. "Wendy, John, Michael," he called. There was no answer. Then he heard a faint tinkling sound, Tinker Bell's voice. She flew in through the tunnel, her light flickering with urgency. "Peter, the pirates, they've taken everyone." Peter's eyes blazed. "Then we'll get them back," he said, grabbing his sword. "Come on, Tink. Tonight Captain Hook meets his end." Far out in the bay under the pale yellow moon, the pirate ship Jolly Roger rocked gently on the water. On its deck, the children stood in a line, their hands tied, guarded by the cruelest crew in Neverland. Hook paced before them, his hook glinting in the moonlight. "So, my little birds," he said mockingly this time, "it's Peter Pan or me. He can't save you now." His voice was cold as steel. "Please, Captain," said Wendy, "bravely let the boys go. Punish me if you must, but don't hurt them." Hook smiled wickedly. "Such courage, but I'm afraid it's too late for bargains." He turned to Smee. "Get the plank ready." Smee hesitated. "Yes, Captain," he muttered, laying the long wooden plank over the ship's edge. The sea below shimmered dark and deep. "Walk the plank," Hook roared. "Into the jaws of the crocodile you go." John lifted his chin. "You'll never frighten us," he said, though his voice trembled. Hook grinned. But I can give you a choice. Join my crew and you live. Refuse and you feed the crocodile." The Lost Boys looked at one another, terrified. "We'll never be pirates," John shouted. "Then prepare to meet your fate," Hook sneered. Just as Smee stepped forward to push the first boy onto the plank, a strange sound echoed through the night. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Hook froze. The sound grew louder. His face went pale. "No," he whispered, clutching his chest. "It's him, the crocodile." The pirates looked around in panic. Then above them, a figure swooped down from the rigging. "Not the crocodile," cried a familiar voice. "It's Peter Pan." With a flash of light and a whirl of fairy dust, Peter landed on the deck, sword in hand. "Did you miss me, Hook?" he shouted. The ship erupted into chaos. The pirates swung their swords, but Peter was faster than the wind. He leapt, dodged, and spun through the air. Tinker Bell darted around him like a tiny golden flame, dazzling the pirates with her light. "Get him," Hook screamed. But one by one the pirates fell. The Lost Boys broke free of their ropes, and soon John and Michael were fighting too, using anything they could grab: sticks, ropes, even buckets. Hook and Peter met in the center of the deck, swords flashing under the moon. "You've been a thorn in my side for too long," snarled Hook. "And you've been nothing but a coward," Peter shot back. Their blades clashed again and again, ringing like bells. Sparks flew. The ship rocked violently as the fight raged on. Hook swung his hook, barely missing Peter's shoulder. Peter ducked, then kicked the sword from Hook's hand. The pirate captain stumbled backward toward the edge of the ship. "Time to grow up," Peter Hook hissed. "I'll never grow up," Peter said, lunging forward. He pushed Hook back and the pirate lost his footing. With a final scream, Captain Hook fell overboard and landed straight into the waiting jaws of the crocodile. The crew froze in terror, then scrambled to the side of the ship. All they saw were ripples and bubbles on the dark water. The dreaded tick-tock sound faded slowly into silence. Peter stood at the rail, breathing hard, his sword still raised. "Hook is gone," he said quietly. "The Jolly Roger is ours now." Cheers erupted from every corner of the ship. Wendy ran to Peter and hugged him tightly. "You did it," she said softly. "You saved us all." Peter smiled, though his eyes were distant. "Let's go home," he said. The sails filled with fairy dust, glowing like silver silk. The ship rose slowly into the air, higher and higher, until it floated above the clouds. Below them, Neverland shimmered a dream fading in the moonlight. Wendy stood at the bow, gazing down. "Goodbye, Neverland," she whispered. "We'll never forget you." The ship glided gently across the starry sky, the sails glowing faintly with fairy dust. Wendy stood beside Peter at the bow, her eyes full of wonder and a quiet sadness. The lost boys huddled together on the deck, whispering excitedly about what life in London might be like. John and Michael leaned over the railing, staring down at the clouds, trying to spot their city below. As dawn broke, the golden light of morning spilled across the sky. Beneath them stretched the familiar streets of London, wrapped in a soft mist. Chimneys smoked, church bells chimed, and somewhere far below a mother's heart waited and hoped. "Look," said Wendy, pointing toward a tall row of houses. "There, it's home." Peter smiled faintly but said nothing. The ship descended slowly, coming to rest above the Darling house. The nursery window stood open just as it always had. Inside, Mrs. Darling sat near the fireplace, her hands clasped together, her face pale with sorrow. She looked at the empty beds every night, praying silently for her children to return. The window curtains fluttered gently as the ship lowered. Then, with a sparkle of light, Wendy, John, and Michael floated through the window and landed softly on the nursery floor. Mother Wendy cried. Mrs. Darling turned around. For a moment she didn't breathe. Then she gasped and covered her mouth, tears flooding her eyes. "My children. My dear, dear children." She ran to them, pulling them into her arms, kissing their faces again and again. "Is it really you? Am I dreaming?" "No, Mother," said Wendy through her tears. "We're home at last." Nana barked joyfully from her kennel, her big tail wagging so hard it thumped against the furniture. The noise brought Mr. Darling running into the room. When he saw his children, he stopped in shock, then hurried forward, laughing and crying all at once. There was laughter, there were tears, and for the first time in many months, the Darling nursery was full of happiness again. Then Wendy turned toward the window. Outside, hovering in the soft morning light, was Peter Pan. Tinker Bell twinkled beside him like a spark of sunlight. "Peter," said Wendy, stepping forward, "won't you come inside?" Peter hesitated. "I can't. I don't belong here. I don't want to go to school or grow up or wear shoes every day." Wendy's eyes filled with tears. "But I'll miss you," she said softly. Mrs. Darling looked kindly at him. "You're welcome to stay, Peter. Or if you must go, promise that you'll let Wendy visit you sometimes." Peter's eyes brightened, truly. "Every spring," said Mrs. Darling, smiling. "She can visit you in Neverland for 1 week. Then I'll come for her when the first flowers bloom," said Peter. He looked at Wendy, his grin returning. "We'll have adventures again." "I'll wait for you," Wendy whispered. With that, Peter turned to the window. "Come on, Tink," he said. "It's time to go home." Tinker Bell's light shimmered brighter, and together they rose into the sky. Wendy ran to the window and watched as Peter and his tiny companion soared higher and higher until they were no more than 2 specks of light among the stars. As the years went by, life in the Darling home returned to normal. John and Michael grew up and went to school, while Wendy never stopped dreaming of the island in the clouds. Each spring, when the cherry blossoms bloomed, she left the nursery window open just in case. Sometimes when the wind whispered through the curtains, she thought she could hear the faint sound of laughter, like the echo of children playing far, far away. And on quiet nights when the stars shone brightest, she would close her eyes and remember the boy who never grew up, the boy who taught her that believing was the first step to flying. Because that's what Peter Pan had really shown them all, that growing up doesn't have to mean forgetting. That courage, imagination, and love can keep our hearts young forever if only we let them. And somewhere beyond the clouds on an island that exists only in dreams, Peter Pan still flies laughing as he chases the wind across the endless sky, free as ever, forever young. Thank you for listening to this story on Learn English with Sara. If you enjoyed the adventures of Peter Pan, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment below, telling us what you learned or loved most about the story. See you in the next episode, and until then, keep learning, keep dreaming, and keep believing in magic.